Brenda has always admired the unique building located in the Colonia Roma neighborhood of Mexico City. The famous apartments are called Rio de Janeiro, but to the Mexican locals, it is better known as the House of Witches. It sits on a prominent corner location. Now picture a mysterious red brick building with Gothic accents. The corner tower has a pointed roof that resembles a witch's hat. Beneath the hat are two windows that look like eyes, similar to the Amityville horror house. The interior of the apartments have high ceilings and hardwood floors. Brenda's apartment in particular was beautiful. Her unit had a fresh coat of white paint throughout. On Saturday, May 31st of 2008, Brenda moved into her dream apartment. She was given the keys during her walkthrough the previous Friday. She was so excited, she took pictures of all the rooms. Brenda's mom gave her some coconuts that she cured and prayed over. That Friday, she placed the coconuts in the corners of her new apartment to ward off bad energy. Brenda wanted everything to be perfect. Her goal was to make a fresh start in this new home. The day Brenda moved in, the next-door neighbor was moving out. She didn't have any neighbors on either side of her. When Brenda left for work in the morning, she never saw any of her neighbors. When she came home, she heard strange noises. At first, she assumed it was the wood floors creaking or the sounds an old building makes when it settles. One night, Brenda had her friend stay over. The next morning, her friend said, "I have to go. I'm really tired." Brenda said, "But wait, let's grab breakfast or something." The friend said, "No, I'm really exhausted," and she left. Another time, Brenda's other friend spent the night. Because Brenda has cats, she let her friend sleep in the master bedroom, and Brenda took the guest room. She didn't mind because there's a TV in there, and she slept with the light on. The next morning, Brenda's friend was at her doorway. Her friend said, "I'm leaving." "Why?" asked Brenda. "It's 5 o'clock in the morning." Her friend said, "I don't care. I'll leave you my car and I'll take a taxi. I just cannot sleep. I feel a real heavy pressure on my chest." Her friend, very anxious and unnerved, took off. The following Sunday, Brenda hired a feng shui expert. She wanted to know where to place and configure her furniture. The feng shui lady took a pendulum and asked out loud, "What is the energy of this home?" The pendulum dropped to a low level that is said to be negative. Then the pendulum began swinging erratically. The lady said to Brenda, the astral here is very low." She then grabbed some metal ball bearings and asked out loud, "Is there a being here that is not of light and does not belong in this house?" The metal balls answered yes. She asked the same question again, and again the balls indicated to yes. She asked the same question silently this time. The balls kept saying yes. Each time was more intensified, so much that one of the balls shot out of her hand. Lastly, the feng shui lady said some mantras in Chinese, then she left in a big hurry. Brenda was left alone and unsettled. She thought of calling her girlfriends, but they had all fled the apartment before. She remembered one of her male friends who lives close by. She called to ask him if he can please come spend the night. She also warned him that this was not a booty call or any romantic invitation. She just really needed some company to spend the night at her apartment. Luckily, he didn't think that was odd. He came over to support his friend. Now, Brenda got rid of her old couches. She thought she was going to buy some brand new sofas to match the apartment. For the time being, they had nowhere to sit. She laid down a blanket and they sat on the living room floor. While they were sitting on the floor chatting, the floor beneath them got scorching hot. Keep in mind, this apartment doesn't get any sunlight coming in. Plus, it was midnight. Brenda's poor guy friend was sweating bullets. They couldn't put their hands down on the floor because they would burn. Brenda thought about what's happened so far and what the feng shui lady said. She decided she was going to take a close look at the pictures she took on day 1. The very next Monday at work, Brenda downloaded all the photos. She took several shots of the apartment the day she moved in. The first picture she opened was the hallway, where she feels the most dread. Now remember, her walls are all painted white. At first glance, the photos look like a clean, empty apartment. At work, Brenda has some special software that detects the temperature, including heat, in a photograph. When she applied this software, it revealed a stain on the wall in the hallway. When Brenda zoomed in on the stain, it was the image of a man wearing a hat. In her own words, she said he looked phantasmagoric. His figure ended towards the bottom of his legs, with no feet. The next picture she pulled up was the living room. She had originally taken this photo of her cats, but once she applied the software, she saw a small stain above the baseboard. She did the same and enlarged the image. Brenda saw a disembodied head also wearing a hat. She identified the face of this man different from the man in the hallway. This small head appeared to be floating just above the floor. The third photo she opened was of the master bedroom. At first glance, the photo shows her bed, her chest of drawers, and another small stain on the wall. When she zoomed in on this spot, it was the worst image so far. Not one face, but closer to a dozen non-human faces show up. Some of the faces look like monkeys with staring problems. Other faces resemble gremlins with pointed ears. All of the faces have their mouths open, and all of them have fangs. Brenda said there were hundreds of eyeballs that can be seen. Among these beings, there was the image of a dark man with a big old mouth. The rest of the faces, Brenda said, were absolutely demonic. She said the whole wall was inundated with these things. The whole entire wall. She's never seen anything like it. She showed the images to some people at work, including her assistant named Abraham. Although Brenda was scared out of her wits, she determined that these demons were not going to kick her out of her house. That day, Brenda contacted several people, including her mom. She had Abraham run errands with her after work. They gathered the following emergency items: some holy water, some Catholic saints, and a crucifix. Brenda had to borrow someone's Bible because she didn't have one of her own. She was also given several images of Saint Ignacio Loyola. While they were at it, they bought some flowers as they were told. Abraham accompanied her back to the apartment. As soon as they got there, they went straight into ritual mode. They walked in holding Saint Michael, the archangel, as they rang a bell and prayed. Brenda placed an image of Saint Ignacio on each door. She dipped flowers in holy water and tossed them at the bedroom wall. They continued the ritual that whole evening. Once again, it got really hot inside the apartment. Brenda was walking around with a tray full of flowers and holy water. Some of the holy water spilled onto Brenda's blouse and burned her. But they kept on praying, and the temperature inside kept getting hotter. They put more Saint Ignacios all over the place. They put him on the walls, some facing forward, others facing the wall itself. When they were done, they decided they couldn't stay there. Brenda went into her room to gather some things for the night. On that wall, she saw one of the saints already crumpled and folded inward. Upon seeing this, they rushed to shut off all the lights and left. They spent the night at a friend's house. Brenda's cleaning lady was scheduled for the next morning. Brenda met her there early in the AM, but she didn't tell her anything about what's happening. She asked the maid to clean all of the walls and the floors. Brenda had to leave for work, but before she left, she took another round of pictures. That night, she returned to the apartment again with Abraham. First thing they did was turn on all the lights in the apartment. When Brenda walked into the kitchen, the lights shut off on her. Standing in the dark, she thought to herself, "I am light." And at that moment, the lights turned on. She looked at Abraham and asked, "Did you see that?" "Yes," he said. This had Brenda thinking that she made those demon heads angry. They went into her bedroom and found her cats under the bed. Brenda has had these cats for at least a year. In her previous home, they always slept on the bed with her. Since she moved into this house of witches, the poor kitties have lived under the bed the whole time. For the first time that night, Brenda felt okay. The cats finally got up on the bed and were being their usual adorable selves. They even purred and snuggled on the bed with her. Brenda also slept with a crucifix in her hand and an open Bible next to the bed. Not to mention the ritual they just performed the previous night. Brenda was of the mindset that these demons were not going to chase her out of her house. The next day, she opened the new pictures she took after the cleansing ritual. The good news was that her bedroom was free of the demon faces. The bad news was that now her living room was infested with these demons. Now she can see orbs of light flying around. On the floor were the original faces, plus many more. One of the new faces looked like an actual witch with a pointed hat and everything. Brenda described some of the faces looked so disturbing and macabre. They appeared to be laughing. She said that there were hundreds of them, a whole legion. Among this plethora of demons, Brenda saw two heads that looked normal. They didn't look evil. They looked like regular men imprisoned there and being tormented by those demons. Brenda felt sorry for them. Brenda thought maybe she can help some of these tortured souls. She spoke to a nearby church of the Sacred Family. They agreed to go and bless her home the next day. Brenda also called her young landlords. He was 31 and she was only 24 years old. She invited them over to tell them the situation there. The female was laughing and even mocking Brenda. What a bitch. Brenda questioned the guy landlord to tell her what happened in that apartment. He said he lived there all his life with his father, up until his dad died in 2003. He admitted his father died inside the apartment. Then he remodeled the unit and didn't lease it until now. Brenda didn't believe he let the apartment sit vacant for 6 years. She thought maybe he rented it, but people just don't last there. Brenda did some research of her own. She found out that the dad was the producer of a famous theater show. She found 3 more intriguing details about this building. A woman named Barbara used to live there, who was nicknamed La Pachita. She was some sort of spiritual healer. Others said she was a straight-up witch. Many years ago, she used to deal with famous people such as Mexican actress Maria Felix. It was said that Pachita used to invoke spirits and ghosts. The neighbors complained that they used to hear strange noises coming from her unit. It was said that one night, Maria Sabina and Pachita held a seance. They were heard speaking in an unknown dialect. Also, many intellectuals and famous people have lived in the building. One of the writers that lived there was prize-winning Sergio Pitol. He wrote a novel based on a murder that occurred in that same building in the 70s. If that's not enough, Brenda found that the building collapsed at one time. 3 people died in that accident. So just the casualties that Brenda knows about alone are 5. Not to mention this building has stood through the Mexican Revolution. Brenda wonders, how in the world do the rest of her 39 neighbors live with such negative energy? Brenda doesn't feel safe staying in the apartment anymore. Even if she cleans one wall, she knows the faces will jump to another room with more of their friends. She decided to end her residency that day. Brenda lived in that building a total of 10 days only. Not one of those 10 days did she ever sleep with the lights off. She had movers lined up for that Saturday, June 14th of 2008. Oh, and remember that landlord bitch who was laughing at Brenda? She sent her an email when she moved out. She told Brenda that after they met, she had not been well. The landlady crashed her car the next day and was seriously injured. Brenda didn't think that was a coincidence. She herself was a skeptic too. That is, before all this happened. Brenda has been deeply impacted by this experience. She has realized that there is true evil and saw it with her own eyes. She knows that she doesn't want to spend not one moment with those demon faces she saw in the pictures. Brenda is now a devout Catholic and a regular churchgoer. She believes in God and heaven and hell. Clara used to say that she can see death. Ever since she was a little girl, she remembers seeing a lady wearing a black dress. Her raven hair was in a long single braid down her back. Clara never saw the woman's face. For the longest time, she can only see this lady from the back. Clara got nervous every time she saw her, because bad things always happened after she appeared. For instance, the day before she turned 18 years old, Clara was lying in bed. She tried to stretch out, but she couldn't move her feet. When she looked, she saw the ominous woman sitting on her bed. She could clearly see her long black braid, but not her face. The next day, Clara went to work. On her way home, she got off the bus and walked the remaining 2 blocks homeward. Before she reached the front door, she was held up by a stranger. Clara was mugged right in front of her house. She can hear her brother's dog barking at the door. Meanwhile, the man is now trying to rape Clara and threatening to beat her with a giant rock. Her brother came outside to see why the dog was barking. It was then he saw his own sister in danger. "Hey, what are you doing to that girl?" he demanded. The thief said, "Come on, man, she's my girlfriend." "No, she's not. That's my sister." The dog and Clara's brother chased the thief, but he got away. He made off with Clara's wallet, and luckily that was all. Fast forward years later, Clara has a family of her own. Her husband is a chauffeur, and they have a daughter named Patty. They were living in a house with one of those outdoor utility sinks. Clara was out there washing before everyone got home. She heard someone walk into the bathroom upstairs. She then hears the toilet flush, then footsteps through the house. She heard the living room door close and someone walked out. Clara thought maybe her daughter Patty might be home from school. "Patricia, is that you?" she called out. When Clara looked up, she saw the lady in black walking across the courtyard and out the gate. 15 minutes later, Patty gets home from middle school. She remembers how pale she found her mother. "What's wrong?" asked Patty. "I saw the lady in black again. I just know something bad is going to happen," exclaimed Clara. A couple days later, Patty's father crashed and caused a multi-car collision. The accident resulted in fatalities, including Clara's husband, whose body was never recovered. Clara was left a widow and crying for days. Clara was religious and a devout Christian. She wondered why this lady in black followed her throughout her life, yet she was not afraid of her, even though seeing the woman in black was always a bad omen. The last few times she saw the woman in black was in the springtime of 2015. Clara was living with her grandsons and their mom, Patty. The eldest grandson was 6 years old at the time. Clara looked out the window and saw the lady in black out on the patio. Clara said out loud, "She's coming for me." Her grandson asked, "Who, Grandma?" "The lady in black is coming for me." When Patty got home, her son told her what his grandmother was saying. Naturally, Patty asked her mom what happened. Clara told her daughter that she thinks she's going to die soon. She said, "I feel like death is coming for me." 12 days later, during the week of Easter, Clara saw her again. She saw the lady all dressed in black with her braid, but this time, she finally saw her face. The lady's face was old and wrinkled. The woman in black spoke to Clara. She said, "We have to go now." Surprisingly, Clara was not afraid. 3 days later, Clara died peacefully in her sleep. When David was a young boy, he loved spending the summer on the ranch with his uncle. David's uncle Leo was the caretaker of a hacienda located in a small pueblo called San Francisco in the state of Michoacan, Mexico. David helped his uncle take care of the animals and did chores around the hacienda. When he was done, he was free to run around and play. But he would soon discover the hacienda's dark past. The hacienda was founded in 1943. It was inhabited by a young woman and her little daughter. It was rumored that the young mother was a witch. The word around town was that she used to practice witchcraft and do black magic. Apparently, she had the gift of a sixth sense. She saw visions and was able to see and talk to the dead. This woman used to freak out the townspeople with the things she said. For instance, she told someone, "Hey, I spoke to your deceased relative. I saw him." She knew things that nobody else would know. She would relay messages from beyond. One of the townsmen went around and snitched to the local priest. The priest went over to the hacienda to speak to the alleged witch. He asked her what's going on and why was she scaring the whole town. The girl told the priest, "I'm not doing anything. I only see visions." The priest did not believe her. He accused her of trickery. He lectured that the Catholic Church frowns upon that sort of behavior. The girl told the priest, "I know what I see. I know who is around me. You have a brother that died from a tumor on his foot." The priest was horrified. He stuttered as he confirmed to the girl that it was true about his brother, yet he couldn't admit the girl was right. In those times, this was not acceptable. In order to appease the townspeople, the priest condemned the supposed witch. This only fueled the hysteria of the crowd. A handful of people plotted against the young mother. They made their way to the hacienda when she was known to be in the stables. The angry mob doused the stables with gasoline and set it on fire. They didn't realize the woman's daughter was also in the stables. She was helping her mother feed the animals. They ended up burning both mother and daughter alive. They both perished in the fire. Fast forward to 1994. Now David is spending the summer at the hacienda. At that time, he's 7 years old. During his stay, he saw a little girl that kept popping up out of nowhere. David was not afraid of her. She was not translucent like a ghost. As far as he knew, she was another child for him to play with. One time, the girl gave David a pouch with coins. She told David, "There are some more coins, but you have to come with me." She signaled to David where she wanted to lead him. "I'll take you to the coins and you can have them all." David agreed and followed the little girl. She summoned him toward the stables. The girl was within reach, but he could never get close enough to touch her. She led David into the stables and he got too close to her. She flung the coins to the ground and David stopped to gather them. When David looked up, the girl was gone. He didn't see her anywhere. David raced out the stables with his pouch full of coins. He kept going until he reached the road and stopped. Some man approached David and said, "Hey boy, what you got there?" David told the man he had some coins. The man looked at the coins and told David, "Let me change these coins for you. They're not worth anything." He gave David 8 different coins for the whole satchel. David returned to the hacienda and told his uncle what happened. Uncle Leo got pissed off and demanded to know who took his coins.
"Show me the man who took your coins,"
he said. David spotted the man and pointed him out to Uncle Leo. His uncle confronted the swindler and threatened him with some choice expletives. He was able to repossess the coins for his nephew. On the way back, he asked David,
"Who gave you these coins?"
David told his uncle everything, including the part about the little girl. Uncle Leo said,
"I don't believe you."
David replied, "It's true. There was a little girl in the hacienda." Uncle Leo said,
"Okay, show me where you saw her."
David showed him around the hacienda, the places where he saw the girl. Uncle Leo was not convinced, but the next 2 nights would change his mind. That evening when David went to bed, he had trouble sleeping. He heard strange noises that filled him with dread. Then he heard a child's voice say, "Come with me, come with me." David wanted out of that room. He yelled out for his Uncle Leo, who rushed in to see him. He found his nephew visibly shaken. David told him that he heard a voice and he didn't want to stay in that room anymore. In an effort to calm David, his uncle said,
"Come on, let's go for a walk. Let's go outside, check on the cows. You'll see there's nothing to be afraid of."
David still looked scared. His uncle added,
"Don't worry, nothing is going to happen."
Back then, there were hardly any lights in the small town, so when they got outside, it was really dark. Nothing could prepare them for what they saw next. They were shocked to see a fiery ball rolling 3 meters off the ground. Uncle Leo was frightened, but he kept his cool in front of David.
"Don't worry, it's possibly just some fireworks or something,"
he said. They hurried back into the hacienda, only to find clay plates broken and shattered all over the kitchen floor. Uncle Leo could no longer mask his fear. He said to David,
"If you want, we'll go stay at Grandma's house just for tonight."
David was like, "Yes, please, let's go. I'm really scared." Later that night, David still couldn't sleep. The little girl followed him to his grandmother's house. She appeared before David and signaled to him. She told David again that she needs him to go with her, but David was too scared to leave. He hid under the blankets for the rest of the night. The next day, curiosity got the best of David. He went to the stables where he knew the girl wanted to lead him. He didn't feel scared now because it was daylight. When he entered the stables, he could hear a swishing sound as if silver coins were being tossed through the air. He could even hear the coins dropping to the ground. But David couldn't see any coins. He grabbed a shovel and started digging around. He thought maybe he could find some more coins. After David dug some spots here and there, he didn't find any coins. What he did find was a rotten, burnt smell from one of the holes he dug. He marked the spot where the smell came from. David went and told his uncle about it. He said, "Uncle Leo, come with me to the stables. Come check out this burnt odor." Uncle Leo asked,
"What were you doing in the stables?"
"I was just playing," Dave answered. After considering the night they just had, Uncle Leo warned David,
"Don't go looking for things you might find now."
Okay, David reluctantly agreed. He kept on playing outside, but away from the stables. Later, he received another warning. Some lady from the pueblo told him, "You better be careful. That little girl might try to take you." David didn't think too much of it. When he got back to the hacienda, his uncle asked,
"Are you going to stay with me here in the hacienda or go stay at Grandma's?"
David said, "I'll stay here, but in another room." The hacienda had plenty of spare bedrooms, Uncle Leo said.
"Okay, cool."
That evening, Uncle Leo went outside for a smoke. David went with him to keep him company. While they were out, they saw a light coming from the direction of the stables. Uncle Leo said,
"Let's go see what that is."
David was scared but followed closely behind his uncle and hung on to him. Uncle Leo said,
"It must be some darn kids over there messing around. Let's go see."
David put on a brave face and said, "Come on then, let's go." Uncle Leo led the way with a flashlight. When they got near the stables where the cows are, they heard a loud screech. It sounded like the screams from a little girl. Out of nowhere, rocks came hailing down on Uncle Leo. They couldn't see where the stones were coming from. They seemed to just be falling out of the sky. So they ran back to the hacienda while Uncle Leo was pummeled by the rocks. When they got inside, they heard loud scratching on the windows and along the wooden facade outside. David said, "Maybe someone is pulling a prank on us, Uncle Leo."
"No, there's nobody else here,"
replied Uncle Leo. Back then, there were no phones, nobody they could call for help. They couldn't just leave. David was getting really frightened. He suggested to Uncle Leo that maybe he should return those coins. He said maybe she wants her coins back.
"No, that's not it, son,"
his uncle replied. "How about if we say some prayers?" suggested David, now almost hysterical and crying. Uncle Leo held David close and told him they wouldn't be able to leave that night. They were stuck at the hacienda and kept hearing those horrible scratches on the windows. The very next day, they took a priest over to the stables, where it is said that the mother and daughter were burned alive. The priest said a mass for the mother and daughter. Then the priest sprinkled holy water on the spot where they burned. Vapor came out of that same spot, then dissipated, like when a fire has just been extinguished. Even the priest was scared as hell. After this occurrence, David never saw the little girl again. Some believe the girl could not rest in peace until she and her mother received a proper funeral. David's grandpa thought she was trying to lead him to a treasure. His theory was that the hacienda's first owner buried money somewhere on the property. Back then, many used to bury their valuables after the Civil War in Mexico. David still owns his gifted coins 26 years later. There are 80 coins to be exact, each one 5 cents, dated from 1942 to 1944. To David, it is a treasure that reminds him of his days on the ranch with his Uncle Leo, who has since died. He will never forget the little girl either, whose restless spirit he helped to set free.